book, I'm really interested, and I've always been interested in human performance. And really, if I were to boil that down, elemental human performance. So, in other words, who are we at our most raw? And we've always heard this old adage that it's only during stress or during stress, challenge, and uncertainty when the real us shows up. And I've always been fascinated with who the real us is. And so, when I was doing the work in the Navy SEAL teams and kind of dissecting what performance is, I really found that performance was really much deeper than just your visible skills, and it came down to these qualities, these attributes. And I think these attributes really fascinated me because they start to inform this really raw performance. They're innate to us, and they inform the way we show up to situations, especially situations of stress, challenge, and uncertainty. Attributes are things like patience and situational awareness and adaptability. And so those types of attributes, those types of qualities start to show and inform us how we show up and perform in any environment. One of the most surprising and I got enjoyable things that I discovered while writing the book was the ability to kind of dive into these attributes. I'd never thought about them as deeply as I needed to in writing the book. And so a couple of things happened. First of all, the attributes began to clump into these categories that I wrote about in the book. I actually clumped into 5 different categories. I had no intention and no ideas on how those might clump when I started writing the book, but they kind of seemed to settle in these specific categories of grit, mental acuity, drive, leadership, and team ability. And that really helped. As I discovered that, helped me really formulate and formalize all of the information on these attributes. And then finally, some of the more counterintuitive attributes were really kind of interesting to dive into. Things like cunning and narcissism, which really are quite pejorative in nature, and people think of in negative terms. And certainly there are negative manifestations of those. But to be able to kind of think about those in terms of how they manifest positively, and how we can metabolize those attributes positively in our lives was really quite enjoyable for me to kind of discover and write about, and even dive into the neuroscience of. Some resources you can start to use or look into to determine your own attributes. Obviously, the book helps because it introduces the concept and lays out what each attribute means. We have an assessment tool online that people can go and take for free. They can figure out where they stand on the grit attributes, the mental acuity attributes, and the drive attributes. So that's a resource. But aside from all of that, it's really one of the things we can all do is we can kind of look back and in some cases autopsy our performance during stressful and challenging times. We can ask ourselves, okay, when I think back at my performance during that time, how adaptable was I? How empathetic was I? How courageous was I? Or, open-mindedness is very easy for me, or I'm a naturally empathetic person, so I'm higher on empathy. So really the idea is, and really the book is about one's ability to kind of look inside themselves. How are Navy SEALs different than everybody else? I wanted to kind of reverse the question and say, how are Navy SEALs the same as everybody else? Because we are in fact human, and we can kind of take these lessons, and I can take some of this experience and things I learned in the SEAL community and extract them and actually help all of us kind of live better lives and perform better lives. So that's really the idea, is if we start to look internal to ourselves and introspect, we will get a better key into our performance. Should we focus our time on developing the attributes we're a little lower in? And the answer is, it's totally up to you. You can do that, or you can kind of capitalize on the ones you're a little bit stronger on. One of the things I would recommend is ask yourself, how is your current situation in the specific niche you're in? You may be in a niche that you're like, this is great. I feel fulfilled. I'm kind of running on all cylinders. If there's friction, if there's consternation, then that might be because you're actually in a niche currently that you are a little lower in some of the attributes required for that specific niche. So it's up to you as to whether or not you actually want to develop those and stay in the niche you're in, or switch to one that's a little bit more congruent with some of the attributes you're stronger in. The fact is, you can develop any attribute you want. You just can't do it the same way as you can a skill. If you want to develop your patience, You have to go find environments that deliberately test and tease and develop your patience, whatever those environments might be. It might be I'm going to go deliberately drive in traffic, or I'm going to go wait in the longest line at the grocery store. I always say having kids, that'll help develop your patience pretty rapidly. But anything, the key is you can't teach anybody else attributes. You can't train anybody else on attributes. You have to do it yourself. And it's all up to you, and it's all your choice. What are those attributes that someone who is concerned about the growth of the business, the health of the business, should be focused on? And I would say by far the most important ones are the leadership attributes. And the reason is because businesses are made up of one common element, and that's people. We can't run an effective business without understanding how to deal with and work with and lead people. And so these attributes, these leadership attributes, are really important. What we have to understand about leadership is there's a difference between being in charge and being a leader, because one's a noun and one's a verb. Anybody can be in charge, and you can put people in charge, and you can self-designate. You can say, I'm in charge, right? You can't do that with leadership. You're not allowed to call yourself a leader. It's like calling yourself funny or good looking. It's other people who decide whether or not you are someone they want to follow. If they look at you as a leader, then you are a leader. Otherwise, you're just in charge. The way that happens is through your behaviors, right? And these attributes speak to those behaviors. So the leadership attributes are empathy, selflessness, authenticity, decisiveness, and accountability. Those behaviors typically are the ones that cause other people to say, that is someone I would like to follow. And so if any person in charge of a business wants to be a leader, behave like a leader, and you'll get people who look at you as a leader, and you'll actually make your business grow stronger, faster. In a team setting, the attributes actually show up and manifest in a very interesting, fun way, because this is actually what makes a team powerful. A true high-performing team is a group of people whose skills and attributes actually mesh together, kind of like a zipper. So you have a high-performing team. You have someone who might be a little bit lower on patience, but higher on adaptability, and another person who's higher on patience but lower on adaptability. Those people come together, and suddenly you have a team that represents all of the attributes and all the skills. So it's really important as a team to understand which attributes are required for that specific team, because the list is going to change depending on what that team looks like. For example, the list of attributes that make up a great Navy SEAL team is going to look different than the list of attributes that make up a great team of surgeons or a great team of teachers. One last thing about teams that we have to remember: a team is simply two or more people working together towards a common goal or objective. That's all, right? So yes, a team can be a SEAL team. Yes, a team can be a business team. A team is also a great marriage. A team is a group of friends on a trip, right? So any type of environment where there's two or more people working together towards a common goal or objective, you have the ability to start combining and meshing these skills and attributes in a way that make the team very powerful and very dynamic. Absolutely. In a team setting, it's not at all about competition. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about vulnerability. The highest performing teams, in the SEAL teams, for example, we all did what we were able to do because we were all incredibly vulnerable. And I know that sounds surprising, but vulnerability comes with a stigma of showing your weaknesses. But it's not just showing your weaknesses, it's showing your strengths and your weaknesses and wearing both of those on your sleeve. So all of your teammates understand exactly when you need to lean on them and when they can lean on you. This has to be transparent in communication. So to be the best type of teammate and have the best team, it's a bunch of people who show up vulnerable enough to say, hey, these are all my strengths. These are all my weaknesses. Here's how I can contribute. And of course, with the humility to say, hey, I know exactly when I need to step up and take charge. I know exactly when I need to step back and be a follower and be able to kind of dynamically swap between leader and follower position. So vulnerability is really the key. Writing the book affected me personally because every attribute that I had to dive into, I also had to index with myself. In terms of the surprising and I guess a little bit uncomfortable discoveries were when I got to those counterintuitive ones. Narcissism was one that was quite surprising, and I had to do some digging and ask myself, really, what is narcissism and how can it actually metabolize in a positive way? Narcissism, in the plain definition, is the desire to stand out, be recognized, and be adored. That is, in fact, the impetus for a lot of our audacious goals, right? There's a hint of narcissism there, and that's okay. This is exactly why the person wants to be the great executive, wants to be the great singer, wants to be the great surgeon, wants to solve the problems for the planet. A little bit of narcissism metabolized in the right way can be great drivers, which is why it's a driver attribute. A little uncomfortable, though, when you're trying to piece that together inside your own system. The advantages in understanding which attributes we're strong in and which attributes we're weak in allows us to understand why and how we show up and perform the way we do. If we feel friction, if we feel consternation, if we feel strife during certain situations of discomfort, uncertainty, unknown, understand these attributes can help us understand why. Okay, it's because I'm low on adaptability. The environment's changing around me outside my control, and it feels icky. I don't like it. I know why now, because I'm low on adaptability, or I wish this would just move faster. Oh, I know why I'm feeling that way, because I'm lower on patience and I'm higher on impatience. So this type of understanding about our own performance, about our own engines, helps us understand why and how we perform the way we do. It's kind of like we understand why and how our Jeep is running on the Ferrari track. Okay, I know why the Ferraris are all lapping me, okay, because I'm a Jeep. Yes, attributes absolutely cross over into HR and the hiring process. In fact, I think it's one of the critical things about hiring. If we try to put together a team based solely on skills, we're going to find a team that, yes, looks great on paper, and does well when things are going well, right? But as soon as things go sideways or things don't go as planned, the team's likely going to turn toxic. So it's kind of the dream team paradox that I talk about in the book. Teams that are built on these skills, and you don't consider the attributes. Attributes show and describe how we're going to show up during stress, challenge, and uncertainty. So what we need to do when we're hiring for positions is understand that for this position, what are those attributes we're looking for? So any hiring process needs to start including some attributes introspection or attributes assessment. Now, that is a little bit more difficult. You can't necessarily do that in a regular interview process. You actually have to inflict some level of discomfort, uncertainty, and challenge into an interview process. So it's absolutely important when it comes to hiring. Some of the work we do with companies to help them figure out, in fact, what are those attributes they're looking for so they can hire the right people, because millions of dollars are lost every year by businesses who hire the wrong people because they're looking at the wrong things. Part two for the attributes right now is to get this assessment tool even better than it is. And right now we're working on the leadership and team ability assessment tools. We're hoping to have those out there in the next few months so people can get an assessment on their leadership and team ability. And then really get out to organizations and get out to people and help them start to discover their own attributes. So I think it won't necessarily. So part two is not necessarily a second book, but part two is let's get this word out to people and help them discover that.